Okay, everybody, evaluate the expression using the order of operations. Now, make sure you review in your textbook all the steps for the order of operations, where first we need to simplify anything or evaluate anything that's inside parentheses, any operations inside parentheses. For example, I see an operation within parentheses here, and I see an operation within parentheses here, but notice we also have these square brackets. See these right here? These square brackets. We then have to focus on simplifying all of that. But first, we simplify the innermost parentheses first. Then second, we simplify the 5 minus whatever, 2 cubed minus 15 ends up being. And then this is a separate parentheses, so that can be done at the same time as with number 1. Okay, so let's get a head start here. Well, first, simplifying within the parentheses. Now, in this set of parentheses here that was just underlined, we have a 2 cubed. That needs to be done first, because we do exponents first. So let's keep the minus sign out here. Let's evaluate 7 minus 2. That's 5. And then the minus. Keep the bracket. We're not touching that 5 just yet. Minus, keep the parentheses, because all we're going to do right now is 2 cubed. 2 cubed means 2 times 2 times 2. That's 8. Keep the minus 15. Keep the parentheses. Keep the bracket. Okay, next. We still have parentheses here that we need to take care of. So let's work on that right now. We could just call this a negative 5 minus. Keep the bracket, 5 minus. Now, 8 minus 15. That's negative 7. Okay, now notice we still have this outer bracket as well. So now we have to work on this here. So now we have minus 5. Bring down the minus 5. Minus. We can keep the bracket if you want. 5 minus negative 7 means 5 plus 7. And I'll just rewrite that. This double negative right here, that becomes a plus. Which now we can write negative 5 minus 5 plus 7 is 12. Negative 5 minus 12, negative 17. Okay, so that was a good example where we had different types of parentheses involved and the steps in which to do them. Let's look at another problem. Evaluate the expression using the order of operations. This is a bit more complicated here. Now, there's no operations within parentheses, but there is multiplication and division going on here. And in our denominator, we can evaluate the square root of 100 first. So let's work this out here. 5 times negative 3. That's negative 15. Now, I'm going to change these to fractions. You could work with these as decimals if you wanted to. But I'm going to work with fractions, because we could always use a little extra help working with fractions. First of all, we have a positive 5 divided by a negative 4. That's going to make this a minus 5/4. Now, before we do anything over here, let's change this to a minus 2. Now, we have to evaluate the negative square root of 64. Negative, so it's going to be a negative in the denominator. Square root of 64 is 8. Square root of 100 is 10. And then minus 1. Now, notice this right here. This minus with this negative here. Really, this is going to turn into a minus negative. And let me show you what I mean on this next step here while we simplify that fraction. So negative 15 minus 5/4 minus, now see this negative, I just used this negative right here and put it in front now of the fraction. And 2/8 simplifies to 1/4. 10 minus 1 is 9. Okay, now this can turn into negative 15 minus 5/4 plus 1/4 all over 9. Okay, this again, this double negative here, this minus minus becomes a plus. All right. Now, let's change all these to fractions. So I need a common denominator. We're going to call this 15 over 1. So we need to multiply this by 4 and this by 4. So let's see what 15 times 4 is. 15 times 4, 5 times 4 is 20. 60. So this becomes negative 60 fourths minus 5 fourths plus 1/4 all over 9. Now, negative 60 minus 5. So now we're just going to work with the numerators here. So negative 60, let's include that negative, minus 5, and then plus 1. So now over here, negative 60 minus 5 and plus 1, that's negative 65, plus 1, that's negative 64. So now we have negative 64 fourths over 9. Now 64 is divisible by 4. 4 goes into 6 once. 6 times 4 is 24. So 16. So now we have negative 16 over 9. Now that negative is with the numerator, but our final answer, we should write the negative out front of the fraction, negative 16/9. So this all simplifies to negative 16/9. So again, you could have actually worked out these and changed them to decimals. See, 5/4 and 1/4. Those are good decimals, but I'd get used to working with fractions, especially if it was, for example, 5/3 and 1/3, because then you don't want to round those decimals. Okay, and our final answer, negative 16/9.